welcome to the afternoon session for Skillsfirst. My name is Nadine Dixon and I am the Senior Examiner for ICT for Skillsfirst. So I just wanted to welcome you to the afternoon session. So I've actually been asked to put this workshop together really to help you, or help some of you contextualise some of the work and the training that you're about to give your learners. I'd also like to go through with you some of the examples of common errors that we find with our exam papers. And I'd also like to invite you later on to another little workshop that will only take about 30 minutes. And that will take place, I think, upstairs. We're going to do it down here. And the idea behind that workshop is to try and give you some indication about using calculations in spreadsheets. And we're going to be looking at word tables and also time management during the test as well, because that's quite important, managing the time correctly from the learner's point of view. So has everybody got a copy of the handouts this afternoon? So do feel free to make your scribbled notes wherever you want. And the film for the presentation is also going to be made available on the website, is that right, Charlie?
Yeah, that's right.
So for those of you that have got colleagues that would like to see it as well, they can catch up. So, if I get this to work, the objectives for this workshop. So the idea is that we want you to have the required knowledge to deliver the tests. You need to understand the examination protocols and be able to follow and comprehend the assessment and examination procedures, particularly as laid out by the report. So that's our objectives for this afternoon. So I've got some sample documents here that might give you an idea of the sort of things that you might want to create for your learners to practice with, or just give it to your learners to actually have a try for themselves. So what we have here is a list of Word sample documents, and if we could just have maybe a look at a couple of them just to give you an idea. We'll have a look at the allergy alert first, which is a Word document, of course, and the idea behind this is that they could build a very, very simple table. Oh no, continue at the bottom right, and that's it. We'll have to go back into allergy alert now. There we go. No, not come back on. It is open down there. There we go. Back down at the bottom. So that is a pretty straightforward word table. So many columns and so many rows. And as you can see, that one is a made-up one of different children's allergies that the centre needs to be made aware of. So that's one particular type of document that would give them plenty of practice to be able to create. They might not be expected to create a table as large as that in functional skills tests, but they might need to be able to create some sort of a table, and preferably in Word. So we'll have a look at another one, so we'll get rid of the allergy there. Let's have a look at the Breakfast Club one. So this one is a made-up nursery, and it's a letter suggesting that they're going to start running a breakfast club. So it's a letter to all the parents. So it's the sort of thing that, using paragraphs and bullets and bold effect and things like that, that you might expect to have to use in an exam. So a good idea of the sort of things that they can use and prepare. So I will close that one down, or my able assistant will, and I'll move on to the next particular slide here, which has got some Excel files. Right, so the Excel files, I mean, I won't go through all of them. We'll have a look at the accounts one, if I may. Look at the accounts one first. Oh dear. Yes. I'm sure it'll work fine. Okay. So the idea behind this one is that they have got different columns for different children. We've got a date of birth column. No, we haven't, so we've got an ID column. And then you can see that we've got 3 columns at the end there. One is for the hourly cost, the child per hour, the number of hours that the child has attended in the week, and then the final column, in column G, is a formula to work out the hourly cost multiplied by the total hours that the child has attended. So I'm not saying that all of the people in your particular environment would need to be doing calculations like this, but if they're doing functional skills, they certainly need to come across formulas. So do bear that one in mind. And at the workshop later, I'm also going to be explaining how that formula, as simple as it is, can be achieved. So we'll have a look at that later on. So if we just have a look at another one then, please. Let's have a look at the contracted hours record. So again, these are all made up by me. They're all straight at the top of my head. But you can see there that we've got a number 1 for the number of days attending. And then column H is made up of the total hours for each of the days of the week. So that adds up to the right. And then if you just scroll down for me, you'll see at the bottom that we actually have a total row totaling the number of hours that those children have attended. And that can then be transferred to something like an invoice that the centre needs to send to the parents. So there's all sorts of ways that you can bring ICT into everyday use of your learners. Okay, so we'll get rid of that one and we'll move on, and I'll have a look at the next slide. And this is the last one. I think this is going to be PowerPoint. If I remember right, that we only do PowerPoint at level 2, I think. So this would only affect level 2 students. But if we have a look, if you wouldn't mind, at the advertisement of a book launch, they are not expected to do a great deal of slide building in PowerPoint. The only thing really that they're expected to do is to put together perhaps 3 very simple slides. They're given information that they have to put on the slides, and if they don't put all the information on that's requested, then they just lose marks. But they can actually achieve quite a lot from this, and it always surprises me really how exciting some of the presentations are that they build. They really like using the colours and using all the animations and things like that, so there's some real good work comes out of those. So we'll just close that one down then, please, Lisa, and then we'll go to finish the presentation here. So this is level 1, typical level 1 task. My made-up scenario is that it's a college assignment. And this is a typical introduction to a Skillsfirst test. So you are working on a college assignment and have received an email asking you to research specific information. And then if I just bring in the specific information, you can see that it's usually some form of an email that says what they need. So, we need to find information about 4 key areas of child development. So we're giving them some clue in the email, and we're expecting them to be able to go and delve a little bit deeper than that and do some research. So, moving on to the next stage, these are some of the easiest marks that can be achieved. So the very, very first thing that they have to do is create some very simple folders and put their names and the task number against that. Depending on the exam, they either get 2 marks or 4 marks for that. So it just depends on whether or not there's a main folder or not. But they can lose quite a lot of marks for this if they just don't have the aptitude of creating folders. So you can see there, quite a simple way, just 5 folders with a task number against it and then their name. And they don't even have to put the full name. If they just want to put Fred or Joe or Susan, it doesn't matter. Okay, moving on to the research section. So the typical question for a research section would be, produce a screenshot to show how you have used a search engine to search for 4 key areas of child development. So learners must show how they use the search engine to be able to capture the information. And the only way that they can evidence that to the markers is to produce a screenshot. So for those of you that are not sure about screenshots, please speak to me afterwards and I'll gladly talk you through that. It's just my IT training side coming out there. Now, apparently 56% of learners forget that we need to see the route that they have taken to get their evidence. So what we're really looking at is a bit of a breadcrumb trail. We want to see where they went and what they found and how they did it and how they've presented it to us. Not exactly rocket science, but I'm always shocked at how many people fail at that particular point. So the question is it down to the learners not reading the questions properly? Is it down to the centres for not giving them enough time to practice? Or is it down to the trainer who doesn't really explain exactly what's required of them? Could be all sorts of reasons why they can't do it. Let's move on to the next of the research tab here. So, as you can see here, we've got a typical screenshot of a Google search, and you can see that they've actually searched in the top box for 4 areas of child development. And that has delivered, I've only highlighted 3 there, but that's given us 3 different websites that we could go to. So they've proved 2 things there. They've proved that they can open up a search engine, and they've proved that they can actually do a valid search for their requirements. And they've evidenced it with the screenshots. That's exactly what we want them to do. So having done that, that's brilliant. So the next one here is, the question is, display the full URL of the website that you use. So what we want to do is be able to, as markers, press or click on the link to see if it's live, see if it's valid. If they've done that, then they get the marks. So there is the typical URL that we would be expecting to see. The second part of the research there, 1.3, is produce a screenshot of the website's home page. So quite easily, they go to click on home page, they see the home page there, they press screenshot and paste it into the document along with the other research information. That's really all we wanted to see at that stage. And the last on the research section is 1.4, list the 4 key elements of the child development. Now when it actually asked that in the email, it said, please would you let me have at least 1 of the elements of child development. So I just chose cognitive, emotional, social and physical there, so you can actually see what they are. This actually tests their ability to copy and paste as well. So we're getting a lot of information about the ability of the candidate, the learner. So we'll have a look at the next screen. Name one of the key elements and briefly explains what it means. So I've zoomed in or honed in on cognitive development. So I can actually prove that I can go and research something, I can take a copy and a paste of it, put it in the document with all the other research information and bundle it all up, ready for the marker. At each stage they're expected to save and resave, and every time they're requested to save something they have to save it in that particular format. So moving on to 1C, which is the end of section 1, where they have to do all the searching, but then on the next section, which is email, this is a typical question that they will find within the test screen or the test paper. So please email your research findings to whoever, and I've just substituted my name for that. And then produce a screenshot to show that A, you've completed all the required fields, so you've put into who it's going to, you've put in a subject line, most important these days to put a subject line in. Many website servers won't accept an email these days if you don't put a subject line in. It's considered to be suspected spam. So in the real world, when they go out there into the job market, they need to know that. They're expected to be able to attach a file, and that file is all that research that they've done through 1B and attached it to the email. They don't have to send it, but we need to see that the attachment's there. We also need to see that all the fields are filled in. And we do need to know that the content of the message is clear. So if I just move to the next screen so you can see a typical email that should be laid out correctly. So we've got the 2 recipient in. we've got a subject line, which is the key areas of child development. You can definitely see that there is an attachment there. It's called research, Felicity. And we can also see that there is some message, and I can read quite clearly that that's quite adequate. And they are answering the question, please list one of the areas of development and just expand on it a little bit. So they put that in the email as well. And just to give you an idea of some of the common errors with the email section, one is that the email address of the recipient may often be wrong. They've probably either just missed out one of the characters or they've missed out the @ sign. And believe it or not, that is just one mark wasted. They will not get a mark for that and it's just lost. So just for the ability to take a little bit more time, no subject text. I would think 50% don't put a subject line in. Could easily be that they're panicking because it's test time. Could be that they're concentrating on the next bit and they miss and jump down. And sometimes we get no message at all. Absolutely nothing. You just say, cheers. So they've completely lost the plot at that point. I had one recently that was all about sending a poster for a shop. And it actually said, thank you very much, I'd love to come to tea. So they probably thought, I don't know what I'm supposed to put here. Oh, I'll just say I'm going for tea. Lovely. So before I continue with the presentation, what I'd like you to do is just refer to this printout that you've got on your tables. What I've done is I've produced, with all the beautiful colour on it, the functional skills mapping for using ICT for functional skills. And on the back of that, you will find some typical examples of task questions that your learners, your delegates will have to answer if they're doing a functional skills test. So if you just like to work within your tables and try and work out which coverage and range fits what, then we'll have a little bit of a session. So if you think that creating folders in a work area is understanding, find the coverage and range and just write it in next to the question. So you've got your reference sheet there that covers all the different ranges. Does that make sense, what I've asked you to do there? Are you with me so far?
Yeah, you just put in. You know, like you would do a so if you were doing that.
Yeah, so where does it meet on the skills mapping?
Manage information storage. Yeah?
Coverage and range.
It doesn't matter really if you haven't completely finished, but it would be helpful if you were prepared to go through it with me and offer up your suggestions. So what do we think to 1.1? Folders creating in a work area. What do you think we've got for that? I have to shout out. You won, yeah? Anybody else? Any more extensions on that one? Three. Yes, 3.1. It's definitely correct for that one. One mark for that table. Extra sweets over there. The next one, 1.2. Sorry, it's the same block, working at the top. We've done 1.1, we're now looking at 1.2. Appropriate folder names. Say that again? Is there any other table wants to offer another suggestion for that one? It's a repeat of the first one. It's U3.1 again. Yeah. Manage information storage. So if we move on and have a look at task 1B then, 1.3, image of book cover of the Smart Parenting Guide. Worth 2 marks. What have we got for that? Oh, well done, whoever said 1.1. Yes. F for Freddy, 1.1. Yeah.
F2.1.
2.1 is the next one. Yeah. Saving the image file.
D1.
No, that's still 3.1 for understanding. Have I got that right? I might have got that one wrong myself now. I'll have to come back to that one, I can't find it in the list. How about 1.4, the document file? Search words and acquiring the full web page. What have we got for that? Yeah, well done. Yep, F1 for that one. And finally, the last one, which is task 1C, where you've done a screenshot of the created email. What have we got for that one? D3.1, yeah. Read, send and receive electronic messages with attachments. Right, well that's certainly given you a bit of food for thought, hasn't it? And it's kept you out the graveyard shift straight after lunch as well, so get your mind working there. So, what I've actually got here are some examples of where marks are lost. And this is typical marking speak. The markers mark the tests, and then I, as senior examiner, mark their marking. So what we need to do is make sure that the standards are maintained across the board, so that there is a check at every single stage. So I don't second mark every single paper, but I know that if I've got a good average from the majority of the team, then we've got an ongoing valid test. And I just wanted to point out that when we do mark, we mark to award marks. We don't open a test paper or open the screen and think, let's see how many we cannot award today. It's our job to make sure that people actually gain a certificate and not have to keep retaking a test and be demoralised. So we are really keen that you know that we mark very considerably. So let's have a look at this first one then. So they've made a non-effective application. That could mean that they were probably meant to do it in Word and they've gone and done it in Excel, so they haven't understood the question very well. Formatting, -1, no formatting at all. Perhaps even a bold or an underline would have been good there. Page size, not appropriate. Sometimes they're asked to change it from an A4 to an A5, or a different setting. Didn't do that. Price list not shown as a table, so the -3 marks there. So when you actually look down, that total loss is 7 marks. And if they only get 14 marks for doing that particular part of the task, they've lost half the marks for that one. Have a look at the next one. Very similar stuff. Sales income not, what does it say? Sales income not formulated, so no formula. So they probably produced results, but they maybe done it on a calculator, which they're not supposed to do. We're actually looking to see how they can use their spreadsheets to create a formula to get a result out of it. What else have we got there? Currency not shown to 2 decimal places. They just don't have time, they're panicking at that point. They're start thinking, oh, let me get through this test. And they're not reading all the questions, so they're not actually doing the final small pieces. Minimal formatting. Well, the problem with formatting is that if they think that there's 7 headings and they make them all bold and underlined, they're going to get 7 marks. Well, of course they don't. They get 1 mark for 1 bold and they get 1 mark for 1 underline, and the rest are ignored. So if they went and had a little bit of a forage into borders and perhaps a bit of colour and a bit of spacing and a bit of white space down between them all, they might have actually got an awful lot more marks. So I'm not going to spend too long on them. There's actually 6 altogether, I think. I'll just give you an idea, but you've got that to take away with you. It can become your Bible. I will not let them make these same mistakes. So this is time management, really. I'm not going to spend too long on this because we might discuss this later on in the of the workshop. But you can see how the actual different parts of the test is broken down, Part A and Part B. 120 minutes altogether, so we've got a 13 and 9 there. So it has been suggested that I might be able to help the learners to manage the time better. And if that's the sort of thing you've got a problem with, then do speak to me afterwards and we'll have a chat about that. So this is where you can see that we've got different marks for different areas of the test. Developing, finding and using, so that's for you to take away with you as well. And you can see there that the largest number of marks available in this particular area is developing marks for develop, present and communicate information. So that's quite a large area there. So, common errors. Oops, sorry, let me go back. I pressed the button, I didn't mean to. Go on, go back. There you go. So in section A, we asked them to look at files and folders, do some research, and send or create an email. Quite often they don't put the name on the tasks. Quite often we just get the first name and no task number. On the subject of research, I'll come back to that one if you wouldn't mind, all that thought there. Missing items on the email I already talked about, no subject line, no attachments. I'll go into detail more on that within the workshop. So, these are the common errors for database and spreadsheet. Now, not many of the centres do introduce database into the training. Quite often, their skill sets just leave them in using Excel perhaps. But there are some additional marks that are available if they did use Access. But I think you could probably lose about 3 marks if you have to use Excel. So it's not a big chunk. One of the worrying trends with spreadsheets is where it would appear to the marker on first glance that the marks are there, that they actually have the correct result. But when we go behind the screens and start looking, there are no formulas at all. That either means that they've used a calculator or somebody's given them the answer. And I'm afraid that does happen. Not at Skillsfirst. There are other awarding bodies that I've worked with that happens. And as I said before, the thing that always surprises me about the presentations is that they are so good at it. Very innovative, and they love the design themes. I've gone too far again, haven't I? So, back at PowerPoint again. So, if there's one thing that you take away from here today, is that you need to tell your learners, and then you need to tell them again. And then you need to remind them that they've been told. And then you need to remind them that they've been reminded that they've been told. And then tell them again. Reading the question takes just a few minutes, and a lot of them never actually read the question properly first, they just dive in. But retaking the test takes a lot longer than actually reading the questions properly. As for Word, learners are actually quite good at Word, probably because they've used them before at home or in school or whatever. So we're looking for reasonable Word skills to be able to do formatting and layout. So the evaluation section really is the part at the end of the task where they are expected to understand some of the features or some of the safety features of using computers. So they might be asked something about safety online, and they might be asked if there's no sound coming from your speaker, what could the problem be? And there's probably about 6 different ways of solving that question. So there's going to be some question at the end of the task to evaluate their knowledge of ICT. And whether it's something like passwords or security questions, you know, what makes a good password? Mixture of uppercase and lowercase letters, mixture of letters and alphabetical entries. So there's all sorts of different ways that you can question evidence. So, if I can possibly give you a reminder of all of the things that, some of the things that we also have problems with. Graphical images. And I really can't stress the importance of this reminder. If your learners fail to heed the advice in the question, which is save your work in the application in which it was created. So if they've saved, if they've created a I can't even speak. If they've created a spreadsheet, and then they've created a formula, but then they've done a screenshot of it and put that in as evidence, then we can't see the formula there. So we can't see the evidence, so we can't award the marks. Not that we don't want to. We can probably give 1 mark for a correct outcome, but we can't give the extra mark for the formula as well. Which is a shame. If they've done the work, you want to be able to give them the mark. So if a screenshot is the only way to capture the evidence, then such as the research, then that's the only way to do it. But if they're saving the work in Word or Excel or PowerPoint, we actually need to see the file. Okay, so that means to me that the next section really is up to you, because I'm just going to take you to the any questions slide. And just to ask you really, any questions for the team whilst we're here? Yes?
Will there be any more practice tests?
Buddy, you should just mention that. Yes, because I've just asked Myra if I could write a couple for her.
Yeah.
And she said yes, gladly. So, I'm going to have to get busy now, aren't I? Yeah, I'll do you some specially for you.
Oh, excellent. Thank you very much.
I'll burn the midnight oil.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No, I've covered it. I can't cover everything, surely not.
Is this cover level 2 as well?
Yeah, most of what I've suggested here does cover level 2 as well. But I've had to be very careful about the things that I mention and are not included in live tests. So I've had to be very careful about what I say today. There's new rules and regulations in force. You had your hand up?
Practice test, you just developers, is that would that be able to others?
Can you speak up a bit? I can't quite hear you.
Practice test that you just talked about?
If I do a practice test, it will be available to everybody on the website.
Okay.
Yes?
Not me then. Are childcare ICT tests, childcare relevant to the
No.
your
No.
base
If only.
or-
If only. Yeah, no, I'm afraid not. They're very generic. And it would be very hard to make it into industry specific, really. So, you know, we are aware that some people's need different types of tests, but we can't do that. Anything else? No?
Have you produced one for level 2s?
I haven't. No. Do you want me to? So, at the back of your handout for the presentation, you'll also find that there are the additional support websites as well as the additional resources websites. And I've only got 3, and there are lots of them. So do have a good search on the internet. You'll find plenty out there. So I hope I've given you some food for thought. And if you need any help, do come up to the workshop later on or speak to me when I'm off the podium. But thanks very much for your attention.
Thank you.